Despite upsetting the number 1 seed in Class C2, number 16 Yutan still had to make a road trip in the quarterfinal round of the playoffs to square off with number 9 St. Paul. The Chieftains received the ball first, but midway through the first quarter, St. Paul DB Parker Klingensmith halted Yutan's drive with an interception. The Wildcats' offense wasn't as successful and turned the ball over after going 4 and out. Just like the previous week, the Chieftains' ground attack put them on the board first as Parker Strand's number was called from 1 yard out to give Yutan a 7-0 lead with 1:45 on the clock in the first. The two teams traded punts on the next 3 possessions due to both defenses playing well. But Yutan's offense broke the mold when Trevor Ziemba used his speed to burst through the line for a 45-yard rushing touchdown. The score gave the Chieftains a 13-0 lead with 8:59 left in the second. With just under 3 minutes to go in the half, a bad pitch by the Wildcats gave Yutan great field possession, and they would only need 1 play to capitalize. Jared O'Malley and Chase Purchell were at it again for the 35-yard score to put the Chieftains up 19-0. Just before half, Brylan Menacucci would make sure to preserve the first half shutout by intercepting St. Paul's Tanner Roboleski on 3rd down. You may hear Menacucci's name again, so be ready. In the second half, it looked as though St. Paul finally got back on the board with a huge 64-yard passing touchdown from Roboleski to Wyatt Plackey, but it was called back due to a block in the back. On the next play, Roboleski connected with Joe Mouse for another big play, but Mouse was tripped up just before reaching the goal line. Determined to score, Roboleski finished off the drive with a 3-yard sneak at the 9:45 mark of the third quarter to cut the deficit to 12, with St. Paul trailing 19-7. Unfortunately for the Wildcats, from there, it was all Yutan all the time. Just under the 4-minute mark, Parker Strand punched it in from the 1-yard line to put the Chieftains up 26-7. On the next drive, Scott Wooster picked off Roboleski and had a huge return, but Menacucci was flagged for targeting on the play, which gave the ball back to St. Paul. Parker Strand wasn't worried though. With 27 ticks left before the fourth quarter, he had an interception of his own. Unable to move the change to start the fourth, Yutan was forced to punt, but 1 play into the St. Paul drive, Menacucci got his 2nd interception of the night. Strand then turned around and got on his horse for a 43-yard rushing score on the first play of Yutan's next drive, giving the Chieftains a 32-7 lead with 9:17 left in the fourth for Parker's 3rd TD of the night. Just to make sure everyone knew Menacucci had an eye for the ball, if they didn't already know, he picked off Roboleski for a 3rd time on the next drive, 3 defensive snaps after his previous interception. The nice return gave Yutan great field possession. And 1 play later, Trevor Ziemba got his 2nd score of the game, this time from 4 yards out to give his squad a 39-7 lead with 7:33 to go in the game. St. Paul's last drive of the night resulted in another Chieftain takeaway. This time, Clayton Nelson and Chavis Van de Sal collaborated to force a fumble. Teammate Blake Hutton would recover to give Yutan possession with 3:28 left. From there, the reserves got to see some playing time to close out the game. The 39-7 victory propels Yutan to the C2 semifinal next Friday, where they will host number 4 Wilber-Clatonia. After the game, Strive Sports senior writer Tony Chapman caught up with Yutan's head coach.
Ready? All right, Tony Chapman from StriveSports.com here in St. Paul with Yutan head coach Dan Krychek. The Chieftains 39-7 winners over St. Paul tonight. They advanced to the semifinals. Coach, a good all-around effort offensively and defensively for you guys. Talk about the defense first, just what the focus was and trying to, it looked like maybe get them out of their option game a little bit and have to throw it on you.
Yeah, that's I'm glad to be done preparing for that offense because we broke down film and they had over 20 formations, and that was just a nightmare to try and get our guys lined up right. So all week we just kind of focused on, all right, just get lined up correctly, and then we'll just play our base defense, and that's kind of what we did. And they picked up on a little bit. We had to make a little bit of adjustment after they scored, and I think that kind of helped. Our defensive backs have been playing really well since Wilber, so really happy with that.
Offensively, it seemed like you were able to control the line of scrimmage fairly well. And it looked like you had some things going on the perimeter, but also inside. You looked like you had some trap game going that you scored on a couple times.
Yeah.
Talk about the play of your line tonight.
Yeah, their defensive line they just got motors, and we saw that coming in, so we figured we might be able to get them on a few traps, and that's what we got them on early. And then they switched to a little different front and weren't coming quite as hard, and kind of killed that. So then we started getting a little bit outside, which thankfully we got enough speed. Our linemen can get out there and block, and Strand making a good run, and Coochie was running hard. So, our guys adjusted to their adjustments pretty well. So.
In C2, you had two backs over 100 yards, one back close to 100 yards. I think Parker ended up with about 98 yards. So be able to have three guys that you can give it to is kind of a nice thing. And
that's a tough. Those three guys are, because all three of them are so different.
Yeah.
They're all three different runners. So I kind of tell them we're just going to rotate and see if anybody gets a hot hand, and then they all end up running well. So then I just got to keep moving it around, and God, that's got to be tough for a defense, and you don't know if you're going to get a guy pounding over you or cutting or just slashing up the field. So, that makes it tough for defenses to key on one guy when I could give it to any of those guys. So
the last team into the playoffs is now hosting the semifinals next week against Wilber-Clatonia, who you've seen before. What has your team learned since that last game, and what do you have to do to turn the table on that really good football team that they have?
I'd say they're a fantastic football team. I'm not looking forward to having to play that line again. Those guys are some football players there. It looks like a college line coming off the bus. So, we got our work cut out for you. We're gonna just try and clean up the mistakes we made in the second half of the last game, and just see if we can't keep it a little bit closer in the fourth quarter and try and make a game of it. That's, you're facing the number one team and undefeated. That's about all we can do, is just try and get our guys to play hard and keep it close.
The Chieftains will get their second shot at Wilber-Clatonia next week in the semifinals. They beat St. Paul 39-7 in the C2 quarterfinals.
For Strive Sports, I'm Austin Penfield.